Hey, good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here. It is Wednesday, the 9th day of January 2019, and time for the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion, the off-season edition. Got some changes on the way for the lower 48 weather. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Good to be back, though. Still getting my energy back from, I'll call it the great illness of late December. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look at the last video before this one. But yeah, things are going really well. I've dropped like 21 pounds. I don't know, can you tell? I can tell. It's kind of nice. I really wish this wasn't the way to do it, but hey, getting along pretty good. Let's get rid of me just for a little bit and get on with the program for today. First, we'll take a look at the Southern Oscillation Index, the SOI. For me, this is a good gauge at what's happening with the pressure pattern across the tropical Pacific, and to some extent a gauge of what's going on with the state of the El Nino Southern Oscillation. And overall, when we look at these numbers, when they're positive, as we saw for the averages really in October, November, and December, especially December, that positive 9, not a big driver of El Nino, not positive. Deeply negative numbers and consistently negative numbers, more of a driver of an El Nino, and we're just not seeing that yet. You can look at that graphically as well here. Kind of flat the last few days. Pretty good rise recently in the 30-day, 90-day, a little bit more steady. It's a longer time period, of course, for those stats. And what it comes down to is what happens with this. Now, because of the government shutdown, unfortunately, we don't really get to click on anything and, zoom in. See, it just, darn government shutdown. But we can cheat and at least blow up the map in Firefox by doing the whole control and then using the wheel on the mouse. And we can get a little bit of an idea from this particular, however that graphic's generated there. Basically with the SOI the way it is, a little bit of warming in the Pacific overall, but no major overwhelming signal of El Nino, certainly no La Nina coming along. Kind of warm, neutral, almost El Nino. We're not really seeing massive global effects or impacts because of it. So, that's related to that SOI. I was just showing you there when these numbers are not negative, and that's the biggest thing. And even today's contributor of minus 2.4, really not a big deal. So the SOI and the configuration of the current anomalies, and actually if you click on some of these areas, you get to blow them up like that. I don't know why those work, but they do. But we'll go back to this just for a second. Notice too here in the Atlantic, and we'll look at this zoomed in a moment, pretty warm in the eastern side of the main development region overall. Something we'll keep an eye on in the coming months. And then, of course, lots of warmth off the East Coast, and we'll go ahead and just look at that now. Very warm Gulf Stream. Wait till I show you some actual temperatures here in just a minute. Remember, these are anomalies. These are departures from the long-term average. Pretty warm down here in a good part of the Gulf. And just a little bit of a cooling effect right there off the coast of South America. None of these anomalies here are strongly positive. We're just not seeing an overwhelming warm signal from the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation phenomenon. Again, off the coast of Africa, at least, we'll call it from the near the Cabo Verde Islands down close to the equator. This area is quite a bit warmer than the long-term average, but then the central and eastern or western parts of the MDR, a little bit colder. It's only January, but it is something to keep an eye on. We'll see how this evolves. Remember, I was talking in a update, I guess, towards the end of December, that the the North American Multi-Model Ensemble, or whatever it's called, the NM. Let's get me back for a second. Remember the NMME that I was showing you in a previous discussion? Generally showed a warmer Atlantic going into the hurricane season, followed by somewhat of an El Nino signal, very weak signal in the tropical Pacific. So this is interesting to see a little bit of that warmth starting to show up. Will it last through into June, July, August, and beyond? Well, we'll just have to wait and see about that. But this, we'll put a check mark here. This has my attention, and we'll see how this evolves over the coming weeks and months. So here's the subsurface graphic. Luckily, this is continuing to update. Kind of a large crack in the overall warmth over here in the eastern Pacific. Not sure exactly what's driving that. Overall, the sea surface temperature anomalies have kind of backed off a little bit, as you can see here. But maybe some more reinforcing warm pool action in the West Pacific as a pretty substantial, fairly long-term westerly wind burst is underway, meaning that the overall wind pattern is more anomalously from the west instead of the trade winds blowing from the east. And so maybe a little bit of a reinforcing shot. Again, we'll have to see the different models. They're hard to gauge this time of year. They really are. Some of them showing El Nino going on through the spring. You know how that goes. They're not very good at it, those models, put it that way. So I like to look at things like this because, this is an interesting factor right here. There's just not a lot of upper ocean heat content in the overall tropical Pacific to really worry about a significant warm event happening. And we're into January. It's just, I'm not feeling it. Once again, it's like it tries, but it doesn't happen. And the big one we had in 2015, that was disruptive enough globally. El Nino is great for killing Atlantic hurricanes, but it does have its own global ramifications for high impact weather events. So, it's a big thermostat, one way or the other, either cooling or warming. So here's what I was telling you about the Gulf. Look at this. This is pretty remarkable. This is updated yesterday. That's the 26 Celsius line right there, folks. I mean, geez. And then you add to the fact that there's 27. So what does that translate to Fahrenheit? Well, we're talking 80, 81 degrees still through the Florida Straits and a good deal of the Southeast Gulf coming up out of the Yucatan Channel. Eventually we'll get these big cold fronts coming down, and that'll mix some of this out and scrub it away. But this is getting pretty late. It's not, we're already past the shortest days. So the sun angle is getting stronger again already. You know what I'm saying? So water temperatures didn't cool down all that much. And unless we have a brutal February, the Southeast Gulf may be running above normal. And if we go back and look over here, it does show up right there. Look, there it is. There's the anomaly. A couple degrees Celsius above the long-term average. That'll be interesting to watch as well. And not just for tropical cyclones, but that deep moisture feed when we do get Gulf storms, extratropical storms that move across, from this way up the East Coast. That's more fuel for the fire. So we'll just have to monitor that, because again, it kind of raises my eyebrows. It's January. You got to cool that Gulf off. My goodness. And even here, I couldn't believe it. 26 Celsius. Look at those little islands right there. The water temperatures are still close to 80 degrees, not very far off of Cape Fear, Charleston, Savannah, the Gulf Stream down there. 25 Celsius, 24, all the way up through here. When we do get these big winter storms, that is a lot of energy here waiting in the Gulf Stream. And again, if we go back and reference the anomaly chart, look at that. I mean, it is right up there, 3, 4, 5 degrees Celsius above the long-term average. And it's just a matter of time. One of these storms, we're going to get a big, as they call it, bombogenesis event. And that energy will carry up and probably off of New England, and more likely in February. February is the September. That's the way I look at it. February is to winter storms as September is to hurricanes. And the winter has not been very dramatic, cold or snowy for New England just yet, but we got a long way to go. So at least for me, it's been nice to have things kind of slow so I can continue to recover, build my energy back, and be ready. Because I tell you what, when I look at that kind of a amazing amount of energy for January stored in the ocean, once you get the atmosphere involved, look out. All right, so looking at the lower 48 weather portion of the discussion, there's a little bit of northwest flow. Northwest, yeah, and when the cold air comes out of Canada, a little bit of that over here in the eastern parts of the country, up in New England, kind of cold and snowy. Stormy with southwesterly flow up here into California, even into the parts of the desert southwest, where the AMS 2019 convention held in Phoenix. Kudos to some of my colleagues out there. I'm looking forward to the Tropical Weather Conference, the National Tropical Weather Conference in beautiful South Padre Island, Texas, in April. I can't wait. At least there's a few weeks to go, put it that way. I've got a lot to produce for my PowerPoint, let me tell you. Anyway, back to the weather. I was just thinking about it. It's like, holy cow, I got to put a PowerPoint together for last year's weather, the hurricanes that I covered. Got to get started. Yeah, lots of energy coming into the Pacific Northwest. But generally speaking, again, the pattern just not conducive for one of those big-time, huge winter storms where you get, the tremendous snow, the wind, the coastal flooding. It's just sort of your garden variety, fairly progressive pattern overall. And you can see that reflected in the National Weather Service watch and warning map. Speaking of the Weather Service, real quick, I never try to get political, so I stay out of that part of it. But I'm going to tell you what, folks, hats off to you. Let me get me back on here. I like speaking directly to people. We really appreciate what you're doing in the National Weather Service, those of you that are not getting a paycheck right now because of the government shutdown. It's got to be tough, and I appreciate it. I know the folks that watch these videos, we all appreciate it, and hopefully this will get resolved soon, and you folks can get back to earning the paycheck that you work so hard to get. So from my heart, my family, my colleagues, my friends, to you, we really appreciate what you're doing in light of the situation. And that being said, yeah, products are still getting generated. And as you can see, again, winter weather confined to the northeast. These are wind advisories through here. Is that fairly strong front coming through, going to deliver some cold air? Back to reality, 40s for highs, 20s for lows. And eventually, next few days, probably some wintry weather through here. I'll address that in just a minute. And then again, out west, generally a fairly progressive and frequent storm pattern, bringing moisture, rain low elevations, snow high elevations, wind along the coast, big waves along the coast, things like that. But that's good for the West Coast. You need it. You definitely need it. All right, so looking at the 12Z GFS. Now, again, we got the GFS, the Euro, the Canadian, the NAM, all these different models. You have ensembles and, all kinds of ways that we could look at this. But what I want to do, and is what I typically try to do, is just give you a snapshot through one particular model just to kind of get your attention, especially when we're talking about, wintry weather or a hurricane coming. With hurricanes, it's a little easier. We generally compare the GFS and the Euro, and that's about it. Sometimes we look at the ensemble spreads and so forth. But typically, the National Hurricane Center forecast will always beat most of the track guidance. Intensity is a different story. Now, for winter weather and off-season stuff, mid-latitude storms, there's a lot more involved. So I'm just trying to sort of get your attention, let you know that, hey, could be some storminess coming, maybe some winter weather, and in the spring that translates to severe weather. So let's take a look at what we got. This is the current setup. And here you got the surface maps and precip types, but you also have these heights in here. You can tell that northwest flow coming in just a little bit more, but still no massive, huge trough like that. You see these blue lines in here? These represent the different heights of the atmosphere, the thicknesses, and it's a little bit more of a wintry pattern over here But again, it's just not that widespread, and I guess that's good, unless you really like snowy and cold weather. So let's go through the next several days. You see the pattern evolves to where this storm system takes shape in Texas, and by the weekend, western parts of the Carolinas and Virginia, maybe eastern Tennessee, the northern side of this storm, all the way through, parts of Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. The cold side of the storm, it's, coming back. Winter's coming back. And that's a pretty potent high right there. Dense, cold air, going to fuel some of that cold air funneling into this system. So there will be a return to some of this wintry weather. This is Saturday. We're going into Sunday. Maybe a mixed bag for parts of the Piedmont, of the Carolinas. Probably not South Carolina, but, through the Appalachians, the foothills. Coastal low develops. Some heavy rain again. Cold. But not a major, big-time storm. You know what I mean? This is just another transient, in and out, not a very big impact overall. So, some beautiful snow on the ground, that kind of thing, but not bitter cold when it's over, 10, 20 degrees below normal, none of that stuff. It's just kind of regular winter. We've been so warm and spoiled lately with the wetness without the cold. We kind of forgot what winter's all about. So looking out at about a week, more storminess out here for California. Now this looks like a pretty potent storm here, and some of that precip there could be heavy, especially in the Sierras. Maybe some heavy rain causing some mudslides, just something to keep an eye on. And I'll do that. I'm absolutely planning on doing this again on Monday, trying to get the regular schedule back, and we can focus on that then. And real quick, looking at this from an upper level perspective, the same time period, you see what I'm talking about? We just have a little bit of this longitudinal flow. That's what I like to call it anyway. Otherwise, kind of a ridge pattern out west, just not the major floodgates opening for cold weather. You see what I'm talking about there? It's not there. And that's good. It's going to happen. I figure February is just going to be like, bam, kind of like 2015. It wouldn't surprise me. We'll just have this massive winter spell over a short period of time, probably somewhere in this region in February. But it's not there yet. Again, if we look out, this is about a week out, 5 days, 6 days. See what I'm talking about? There's just no major, massive dip in the jet stream. Everything's generally Pacific air. It's not Arctic and it's not polar. Okay, that's the point here. That's the good part. So that'll be good for energy bills. It'll be good for folks that just rather not deal with cold and snow, and good for me to keep on healing from what I dealt with back in December. By the way, I want to show you something real special. Okay? Been saving this for the end. When I had the aortic dissection, very scary, very painful, I survived. I'm here, right? I was wearing this shirt. Let's see if I can get it back together. It's a Duke basketball shirt, and the ER people at the University Medical Center in Las Vegas, they had to cut it off to help get me into my gown and all that good stuff in case I needed surgery. And they didn't really want me moving my arms and taking my shirt off and doing anything that could have disrupted the very delicate healing of the aorta, which was having some pretty big issues that day, December 20th. So that Duke basketball shirt, I was like, oh, no. And afterwards, some very special people in my life got in touch with Duke University and got a hold of somebody who knows Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K. And I couldn't believe it when the other day I got this package from Coach K to Mark, follow your heart, Mike Krzyzewski. I mean, there it is on my door right there, that Duke. And, just stuff like that. And the people that made it possible, you know who you are. And to Mike Krzyzewski, he won't see this, but somebody might know him. Thank you. It really meant a lot to me. I was born in Durham. I lived on Duke Street. I mean, come on. Been a Duke fan, but it's not just the basketball and the competition and being a fan. It's that tradition of excellence, and that's what I try to follow in my work. I try to improve, next play kind of stuff like Mike Krzyzewski teaches. Don't worry about what happened in the past. You made a mistake, you move forward. And that message that he sent me about following my heart, that is exactly what I have done since the moment I graduated college. I started this whole thing with my own kind of hurricane niche where I have literally followed my heart, my dreams, and have created and accomplished some amazing things. And so when you get something like that, it doesn't matter rivalries, what you may think of different people, none of that. It really made me feel extremely special, even if just for a short time, and I appreciate that. So I want to share that with you guys, okay? It was awesome. So thank you, Coach K, and thank you for all of you who helped to make that happen. All right, so things are good. Things are moving along. I feel a lot better, and again, these updates Monday, right? Every Monday, that's what I'm going to strive for. And eventually, winter's going to call, and I'll be out and about in the field setting up equipment. I'll be right back at it. All right, that is it from me for today. Hey, everybody, I appreciate you tuning in. It's good to be back. It really is. So thank you for being on the other side. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. We'll talk again this coming Monday.